On a dark night, amid pain and the looming shadow of death, a Mustang mother and her foal refuse to abandon each other. But will unconditional love and loyalty be strong enough to help them survive this brutal trial? This story is not just a fight for survival, but an emotional journey of sacrifice, love, and compassion. You will come to understand the sacred bond of motherhood, and this story will touch your heart, awakening compassion within you. Let's begin. The sky over the American West glows with a fiery orange red as the sun slowly sinks beneath the horizon, casting an atmosphere both mystical and chilling. The land is dry and endless, where winds whip through rocks, sending invisible whispers through the air. This is a wild, untamed land, where life and death constantly dance together. Here, wild Mustangs roam free, yet face countless dangers, living a miraculous existence, bound by nothing. Amidst the stillness of this vast wilderness, an image of both pain and resilience emerges. Juno, the mother Mustang, lies collapsed on the ground, her wounds so deep she cannot rise. Sweat beads on her dust-covered coat, and each breath she takes is a battle against the excruciating pain. Still, Juno's gaze never strays from her foal, Leo. Leo, the young foal, stands beside his mother, trembling with a fear he's never felt before. Yet one thing remains unchanged in his tiny heart, his absolute loyalty to her. Though he cannot fully grasp the dangers surrounding them, the one thing he knows is this: nothing will separate him from Juno. Even in the face of death, Leo clings to his mother, as if their bond were a thread that cannot be severed. The sun has set completely, leaving only the dark embrace of night. In the darkness, the silence is broken only by the quiet breaths of Juno and Leo. The danger draws nearer, the predators lurking in the shadows, but neither mother nor foal has any choice but to wait. With death closing in, can the power of motherhood help them survive the night? Audience, join me as we venture into this story, a journey of loyalty, boundless love, and the moments when life teeters on a single breath. And in that moment, amidst the despair, a miracle occurred. Motherhood would transcend all limits, but would it possess enough strength to conquer fate? The night descended like a thick black curtain, cutting off all connections to the world beyond. The faint light from the stars could not lift the suffocating heaviness of the darkness. Cold winds whispered through the cracks in the rocks, carrying the sounds of a wild world filled with challenges and cruelty. Each gust of wind was a reminder that in this vast universe, life and death are close opposites, eternally intertwined in a relentless dance. Juno, the mighty wild mare of the land, lay motionless upon the earth. Her wound was too deep, making every breath a painful struggle. Her body was utterly exhausted, yet her gaze remained fixed on Leo, the small foal standing faithfully by her side. No matter the pain, she could not give up, she could not let her child face this world alone. Sweat beaded on her dusty coat, but her heart remained steadfast, silently vowing that she would never abandon him, no matter the cost. In this moment, motherhood was not just an emotion, it was an invisible force, a spiritual strength that only a mother could fully understand. Each breath she took, each feeble attempt to rise, was a battle between the instinct to protect her child and the devastation of pain. But the love she held for Leo, a love too profound for words, pushed her to fight against the encroaching death. Her motherly instincts, though physically weakened, were stronger than anything else. She could not stand, but she would do everything she could to protect Leo. Leo was everything to her, the sole reason she remained unbroken in this moment of despair. Juno's silent sacrifice stirred all the senses, and from this pain, we saw the embodiment of a mother's unyielding love. Leo, though still so young, possessed an unwavering loyalty to his mother. He did not fully comprehend the danger lurking, but his heart, pure and innocent, knew one thing: mother cannot face this world alone. He moved closer, his tiny legs trembling under the weight of fear, yet he did not falter. He pressed his body against hers, a silent vow, an unconditional protection. No matter the sacrifice, he would never leave her side in this moment. Leo was no longer just a weak foal, he had become a steadfast companion. His small steps, his unconscious gestures, his gentle touches on his mother, all reflected a love that transcended fear, a growth in those pivotal moments. For Leo, his mother was not just the one who gave him life, but an inseparable part of his very being. Sacrifice and loyalty were not just abstract feelings, they had become part of his instinct, an unbreakable vow. Juno felt this, a profound, invisible connection between them. Each time Leo drew near, each touch was not only physical protection but also emotional comfort, a promise that their love would endure all challenges. The silent moments, when neither spoke but simply felt each other's presence, were the purest in their relationship, a bond not only forged through love but also through limitless sacrifice, through words unsaid but eternally alive in their hearts. When hope seemed to have run dry, another figure appeared, offering the only chance to save the wild mother and her foal. The lives of Juno and Leo, once steeped in despair, were about to take a turn they never imagined. As darkness gradually enveloped the wild landscape, with cold winds howling through the cracks in the rocks, John Harper emerged from the shadows, his hands tightly gripping the reins. He was a man who herded horses, living near this land where wild mustangs roamed freely across vast fields, unbound by anything. His life was deeply connected to the wilderness, yet he always maintained a certain distance from the creatures that lived there, understanding that nature was not an easy place to survive. John respected the freedom of nature, where life and death went hand in hand. He had witnessed countless creatures rush into life, only to quietly vanish, and he understood that, in this wild world, only the strongest could survive. Nature never bestowed ease, and creatures like the Mustang were symbols of freedom and the harshness of life. But tonight, when his gaze met Juno, an exhausted mare, and Leo, the tiny, fragile foal, something inside John changed. His compassion could not allow him to turn a blind eye to the sight before him. Though he knew well that nature had its brutal laws, in this moment, the bond between Juno and Leo stirred a profound emotion in his heart. His compassion did not allow him to stand idly by. He knew that life and death in nature were part of the natural order, but when he saw Juno trying to protect Leo, an inner conflict arose within him. Do I have the right to interfere with this natural law? That was the question he faced. Yet, his heart, full of compassion and resolve, urged him to act. He could not just stand by while the two horses endured this pain without doing anything. He had to do something. John was not the type to act impulsively, but in the face of Juno and Leo's plight, he could not remain still. His decision was not a rash one, but a conscious intervention into nature. John understood that sometimes, humans could intervene to protect life when nature's challenges were too great for fragile creatures. And in this moment, he decided that he would be the one to change their lives. John's life was intertwined with long days tending to wild horses, yet he always maintained a certain distance from them. He respected nature, understanding that it was a harsh world where every living being had to fend for itself. But when faced with the plight of Juno and Leo, he realized that the bond between a mother and her child was something that could not be lost. He could not stand indifferent when he knew their lives were in danger. John Harper did not enter the lives of Juno and Leo as a savior, but as a companion, bringing them hope in the dark of night. He could not change everything in nature, but he could save one life, and that was why he chose to act. When all hope seemed lost, another figure appeared, offering the only chance to save the wild mare and her foal. Juno and Leo's lives, once submerged in despair, were about to take a turn they had never imagined. The night was not just a blanket of darkness, but a terrifying silence, like a body waiting for death. The cold wind sliced through the cracks in the rocks, carrying with it a shrieking sound, like the call of devastation, making the air even more stifling. The wolves, those wild, hungry creatures, lurked in the darkness, quietly drawing nearer, like a nightmare both Juno and Leo could sense. Juno, her body worn out from serious wounds, continued to fight against herself with unyielding determination. She knew she couldn't protect Leo, couldn't face the wolves on her own anymore. The pain in her body overwhelmed every ragged breath, but deep in her mind, there was one thought she couldn't abandon: I will never leave you behind. But a painful question echoed within her: Is the love of a mother enough to save my child? The feeling of helplessness grew, weighing heavily on her heart. Yet, her boundless love for Leo gave her strength, even in her agony. Leo, though just a foal, carried an invisible strength in his loyalty to his mother, keeping him steady amidst the panic. He could feel Juno's anxiety and fear, but the instinct within him wouldn't allow him to back down. He didn't fully understand the danger around him, but his loyalty to her wouldn't let the bond between them snap. His worry became a psychological shock as he realized his own weakness and helplessness in the face of danger. But his love for his mother pushed him to overcome the fear, to stay by her side, never to leave. And in that moment, Leo felt something deep within. He was maturing, not just a frightened foal, but a protector, though he didn't yet fully comprehend the danger that was closing in. John Harper saw that in just a few minutes, the wolves would be upon them. A wave of fear surged through him, pulling him into an internal battle. Intervening in nature was something John never wanted to do. He had respected the natural order his whole life, but facing these two wild creatures, his compassion wouldn't allow him to stand by and let them be attacked. How could he save them without violating the laws of nature? How could he avoid feeling that he was trespassing into a part of the wild world he had always respected? Compassion clashed with logic in his heart, but he couldn't let anxiety take over. John felt as though he stood between two worlds, and every decision he made in this moment was a promise to himself: I will do everything I can. As John approached Juno, he not only tended to her wounds but also helped her feel the safety of his presence. Yet, with every action, he felt his anxiety swell within him. The fear wasn't just from the wolves, it was from the tension of the situation itself. How could Juno and Leo survive? Each movement he made carried a heavy weight, as he didn't know if his help would be enough to change their fate. Leo, standing close to his mother, could feel John's calmness, and in that moment, he quietly sensed that he could step out of the shadow of fear. No longer a panicked child, he began to become a protector, a shield for his mother. Leo's sense of insecurity was replaced by resilience, and he understood that his mother couldn't fight alone, but he wouldn't let her face this danger by herself. When John signaled Leo to follow, he no longer hesitated. He felt a sense of reassurance from John and from within himself. No longer afraid or panicked, Leo stepped forward, walking steadily beside his mother. And in that moment, Leo was not just protecting his mother, he was protecting himself. He had matured in pain, and in the bond with his mother, in this life or death moment. When the danger had passed and the sky returned to its calm, a new chapter in the lives of John, Juno, and Leo began to unfold. But with each step they took, they not only faced challenges from nature but also their inner struggles, moments of intersection between love, sacrifice, and trust. Would this bond be strong enough to keep them together on the journey ahead? With each passing day, Juno felt a profound change within her body and soul. Her wounds, though not fully healed, no longer caused the excruciating pain they once did. The physical exhaustion gradually diminished, but it was the change in her mindset that truly made her realize the depth of her recovery. The pain was no longer a looming threat that made her falter. Instead, it had become the space in which she could reflect on herself, on her relationship with John. At first, Juno had not only been skeptical but also fearful of human intervention. However, when she recognized the sincerity and compassion in his actions, all her worries slowly faded away. For Juno, John was no longer a stranger, but a part of her life that she could no longer turn away from. His help was not just a physical act, it was a spiritual bond, a transformation she had never anticipated. She not only felt safety in her heart but also realized that John could become her companion, someone she could trust, a person who wasn't just a savior of the body but a savior through the dark emotional roads she had traveled. Yet deep within Juno, a lingering concern remained: could she truly trust a human, when her instincts had been honed to fight alone? Could John fully understand the harshness of the wilderness she had endured? These questions did not easily fade, but John's gentleness in every small gesture began to dissolve the doubts in her heart. On the other hand, Leo, the foal, was no longer just a small, frightened creature. He had witnessed the recovery of his mother, and this process had helped him grow. From a child overwhelmed by fear, Leo was now able to stand by his mother's side, protect her when needed, despite still being very small. But his love for his mother had helped him mature in each step, in every challenge he faced. Leo was no longer just the loyal one. He had gradually realized that his responsibility was not just to protect his mother, but to ensure the safety of their entire family. The bond between John, Juno, and Leo was not just a story of salvation, but one of mutual understanding and companionship through a journey that was far from easy. John was not just a savior but a companion in a life full of hardships and trials. The love and friendship John had for Juno and Leo stemmed not only from the salvation of their bodies but from a deep psychological bond he had built step by step alongside them. As the darkness enveloped and the space grew silent, like an unavoidable prophecy, Juno, Leo, and John found themselves not only embarking on a dangerous flight, but beginning a journey to save themselves, one that confronted not just the harsh laws of nature, but also the ceaseless inner struggles, where each step was steeped in love, sacrifice, and an unwavering faith. Would this bond be strong enough to help them overcome the final test that lay in wait? With every step, Juno, Leo, and John were not simply fleeing from death, but engaged in a race against themselves, facing their deepest fears and the hidden doubts within their hearts. Juno, though far from her former strength, poured every ounce of energy into each stride. Every wave of pain reminded her of the sole reason she clung to life, to protect Leo. The pain within her body was nothing compared to the psychological anguish she felt as she pressed on, knowing she no longer had the strength to protect her child as she once did. Yet, her love for Leo became an unquenchable fire, pushing her forward through the deepest fears, the lingering sense of duty, and the doubts about her own survival. Leo, with a pure heart and unwavering loyalty, was no longer the frail foal. He had become a steadfast protector. Though still small and weak, he showed an extraordinary inner strength with every step, facing not only death but his own hidden fear. He didn't fully understand the danger posed by the approaching wolves, but deep down, Leo knew he had to stand firm, not just for his mother but for himself, for the strength that came from his love for her. He had matured in this flight, not just physically but spiritually, evolving from a child into a true protector. The threat from the wolves was not only a physical menace but a nightmare that relentlessly pursued them, the howling of the wild creatures ringing out like a call to death. John, though an adult, felt as if he was part of this life and death battle. His actions were not only physical salvation but a form of soul saving as he helped Juno and Leo continue through the dark, painful, and exhausting path. He was no longer an outsider. He had become a true companion, even though he was burdened by the guilt of interfering with the laws of nature. Still, his compassion guided him through all his inner conflicts. The sky darkened, not just physically but in a way that seemed to embody the darkness of their souls, where every step they took held despair but also a miraculous light of love and loyalty. Leo and Juno, exhausted as they were, would never abandon each other. They ran not just for survival, but for hope for a better tomorrow, though they didn't know if they could reach safety. This story was not just a flight from death, but a psychological journey that delved deep into unconditional love and unending sacrifice between a mother and a child, where space and time were merely external factors, and love was the driving force that guided them. Every step taken by John, Juno, and Leo was not just an encounter with the harshness of nature, but also an encounter with deep internal conflicts each had to resolve in their life or death journey. Juno was not only fighting with physical pain but also with the psychological fear of no longer being able to protect her son. She was no longer the strong protector she once was, but her love for Leo kept her determined. Every step she took was a journey from despair to hope, from weakness to an inner strength that could not be shaken. Leo was no longer a fragile foal, but a steadfast companion, a protector not only for his mother but for himself. He came to understand the great responsibility he carried, not just because of his love for his mother, but because of the belief in his own strength. John, who struggled with the responsibility and the guilt of intervening with the laws of nature, gradually realized that love and compassion were not just physical salvation but a journey of understanding and a profound connection to nature and the bond between the two horses. When it seemed that all dangers had passed, another challenge awaited them, bigger and more brutal. Could they overcome everything to find life, or would they collapse before challenges they had never encountered? After all the hardships and challenges, Juno and Leo finally found a safe place, but it was not just an escape from death, it was a journey to rediscover their identity, where love and loyalty were not only their salvation but also the greatest challenges they would have to face. Juno, her wounds still unhealed, was not only recovering physically but also emotionally. The anxieties and fears that once made her doubt John had slowly faded away. She no longer saw herself merely as a mother protecting her child, but as a strong being who had overcome doubts to trust a man who was once an outsider. She realized that in order to protect Leo, she could not do everything alone. And in accepting help, she discovered a friendship, a partnership with John, that was not only physical assistance but also a soul connection she had never expected. John, though an outsider, had now become an inseparable part of their lives. Every step he took was not just a rescue but a commitment to stay with them, a promise for life. He didn't help them out of obligation but because of a deep compassion that made it impossible for him to abandon them. He didn't see nature as something to merely respect, but as a relationship that we must truly understand, where every action holds a profound meaning, where life and love cannot exist separately. Leo, through this journey, was no longer just a weak foal but a resilient protector, guarding not only Juno but also himself. From a child full of fear, Leo had grown, not only physically but spiritually. He understood that responsibility was not a burden but a deep resolve, where love for his mother helped him overcome every challenge and become strong enough to stand firm even when facing death. This bond was not just a story of saving lives, but a story of sacrifice and boundless love. They didn't just save each other physically but saved each other in spirit, in faith, and in hope for the future. This story was not just about survival but about the true journey, where love and loyalty were the only weapons that allowed them to survive. This story conveys a profound message about maternal love, sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty. Juno and Leo, despite facing death and the harshest challenges, prove that unconditional love is the only strength that can help them overcome any adversity. This love never gives up, and it has become the eternal source of strength that allows them to rise above every difficulty they face. The story is not just about the mother-child bond, it is a deep lesson about the connection between humans and nature. When we intervene in nature, it is not to dominate, but to accompany and understand that life cannot exist in isolation. The relationship between John and Juno has become a powerful symbol of salvation in a challenging wilderness, where love and loyalty are vital elements for survival. The end of this story does not mark the conclusion of the journey, but rather the beginning of a new chapter. This bond will endure forever, as a part of the wild nature they have protected together. There is nothing stronger than unconditional love between humans and nature, where maternal love and loyalty open the doors to life. Juno looked at Leo, and in that moment, she knew that no matter how harsh life may get, they would face every challenge together. Leo, now grown, was no longer a fragile child, but a resilient protector, not only for his mother but also for himself. John, standing beside them, knew that love and sacrifice would last forever, not just within them, but within all of us, as a sacred value we will always cherish and protect.